Yu-Gi-Oh can be an incredibly expensive game to play, but with a little patience, you can build a competitively viable deck without becoming a whale. Back in 2022, Konami released the Albaz Strike Structure deck, which helped me get back into the game. 2 years later, it's still a solid way to get into the game while slowly building up its competitive power. Our plan is to go from this to this, a fully competitive build of the branded Despia strategy without breaking the bank. Only spending up to $15 a week buying singles, packs, and trading, we are going to prove that you can still have a good time with this game while playing branded on a budget. Hello everybody, my name is Cole, and welcome to episode 4 of Branded on a Budget. Today, we have got a lot of things we want to cover, a lot of things we want to talk about, specifically talk about ways that we can play the deck better, because from here on, for the next couple of episodes, I don't really know how much more we'll be adding to the deck as of the time being. That said, we do have some packs to open today, so if we're lucky, we'll get some stuff that we want to add to our deck, but for now, we're going to put those aside and we're going to talk about the way that we played our deck last week, things we could have done better, and what I would like to do with the deck going forward. So kind of, not future-proofing, but more so giving you a roadmap of what I plan to do with the series for the next couple episodes from here on out. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk about how we did last week. Now, last week I showed off one duel where I played a mirror match against another branded Despia deck list, and as you all saw, we lost. But that is okay because we learned a lot. The number one thing we learned is that Called by the Grave negates. It's super funny. I probably played through that part of the duel at least 4 times, the 4th time being the time that I recorded my voiceover, and then the 5th time, when I was throwing in like the cards and stuff, I was like, oh shoot, I just activated ad libitum even though I negated my opponent's ad libitum with Called by, and so that's why in the ending of that video I talk about it. Lo and behold, I was correct. People did still mention in the comments, as they rightfully should have, because obviously that was something I should not have done. That said, there was one very specific thing that only one person to my knowledge caught that I didn't even catch myself, which could have been my win condition. That said, it's also under the assumption that I did still cheat with my Call by the Grave play and my ad libitum play. Regardless, let's talk about it. And this is coming from @DoomsdayKing on YouTube. Their comment specifically talking about how when I activated Fusion Deployment, instead of summoning Cartesia, if I would have summoned an Albaz from the deck, I could have just got game right then and there. So, let's recreate that scenario, and we will not discuss, but kind of walk through what I could have done instead. Alright, so this is the board that we had set up. Pretend that this Grand Guignol is my opponent, and they did have it directly in the middle column. However, just so it fits on the camera, we're going to put it right here in the extra monster zone, because it doesn't necessarily matter which zone or column it is. Regardless, this is what we had in our hand. We had a copy of Fusion Deployment, and we had a copy of Fallen of Albaz. What I did in the video, as you all saw, is I activated Fusion Deployment, revealing the Grand Guignol, special summoning the Cartesia, using the Cartesia on board with the Albaz in my hand to fuse into a copy of my own Grand Guignol. Now, what the comment said from @DoomsdayKing, they said I should activate Fusion Deployment, reveal a monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz, summon the Fallen of Albaz, use Albaz's, or not this Albaz, summon from the deck Albaz, use their Grand Guignol to fuse, and make something on my side of the field. It honestly doesn't matter what it was. It couldn't have been that, but something like an Albion or a Drago Stapelia, wherever that may be. Drago Stapelia, regardless. As long as it had more than, I think it was like 200 damage, or no, honestly, they only had 6,200 life points at this point. I probably didn't even need to have a big, strong monster that I summon. As long as I got rid of their defense position Grand Guignol, I win the game, because I got 3,300 and 3,000 right here, which is 63. So, yes, that would have won me the game. I'm pretty sure my opponent had 0 more interactions. They couldn't have done anything else. So, right here, this is where I should have won the game. Thank you @DoomsdayKing for bringing that up. But this does point out something even more specific that I want to just bring up as a whole, and this is figuring out your lines in the branded deck. Figuring out which things can get you to your win condition, even figuring out what your win condition is. And the best example I have for you is a game of Master Duel that I literally did last night of recording this video, where I played against Runic Stun. So we're going to cut over to that and take a look at how I was able to get around the Runic Stun player. Alright, here it is, the Master Duel game against Runic Stun. My opponent got to go first because they won the coin toss, I guess, on a die roll here. They put up a board of the dimensional barrier, they threw on the fountain on the board with the Hugin, searching for the Hugin, and they also, to add on to the top, they put a copy of Messenger of Peace, which I glance at a lot so I can figure out how it works. Anyway, I open pretty dang good, so I do the Allure of Darkness, sending the Mercourier to add a Springin's kit. Then I summon the Albaz to gonna fuse away their Hugin to make a Mirror Jade, and then I activate the kit effect in hand to special summon, and then they activate Goes and Match, locking me to Darks. And then I have to shuffle back the kit because I use its effect to grab the Branded Fusion. I go Branded Fusion, summon the Albion, and I set a copy of Fusion Duplication. Now it's at this point that I have no clue what my win condition is. I'm just driving my mind crazy trying to figure out how do I get over this Goes in match. This Messenger of Peace specifically is the main thing, and the Dimensional Barrier is not that big of a deal, but the Messenger of Peace is probably my biggest flux. So I'm thinking, I need Guardian Chimera, I need to summon with a Fusion spell card. So Branded in Red is literally the only option I have. And I'm thinking, how do I get to Branded Red? Well, I can do a Branded Retribution, I could summon that back with that, and I can do set it off of Albion, but how do I get Albion into the grave because the Dimensional Barrier is sending everything to the Banish Zone, and I'm a little lost. I'm still trying to figure out what I should be doing, and I go ahead and add a copy of Albion off of... What did I add it off of? Oh, luckily for me, they activated a Runic card which banished another copy of Mercourier. Off of the Mercourier, I searched an Albion. Lo and behold, I top decked an Albion, so it didn't necessarily matter that I searched the Albion. Regardless, I used the Albion effect, sending my brightest blazing Branded King, because right then, when they banished my Mercourier, I realized what my win condition was. It wasn't going for Guardian Chimera to pop their floodgates, it was brightest blazing Branded King the whole time to negate their floodgates. And I proceed to use this and was able to win on my next turn. I activate the Retribution, banishing itself to grab the brightest blazing Branded King. I get to draw a card, which is an Allure of Darkness, which helps a lot. It's not a necessity, but it helps a lot and secures my victory by normal summoning the Aluber and searching a copy of Branded Lost. I set my cards so that I can have brightest blazing Branded King live on my turn, and I set the call by as well, almost like a bluff, so if they have back removal, they don't know which one to pick. They do their turn, and I go my turn. I go Branded Lost to make sure I've got the protection. Well, first thing I do is brightest blazing Branded King. They activate Rivalry of Warlords, which is very, very funny. Honestly, if they would have saved the Rivalry, I think I would have been a little bit more screwed, but here it is. Brightest blazing Branded King negates the entire board. I start going off. I use Fusion Deployment, make the Cartesia. It's at this point my opponent realizes, hey, they have a Dragon and a Spellcaster and a Light and a Dark. They activated Fusion Duplication to do the Branded Fusion stuff. What is actually happening? And they know right then and there that they lost. They did have one more back row that was very concerning to me, but I risked it. I went for it, and here we are with a nice victory on my plate and another step of learning how Branded actually works. The huge focus is brightest blazing Branded King. I will be getting that for my deck. If I don't pull it, I'm gonna use the cards that I pull. Well, I'm not gonna pull it because it's not in this set. But I'll be using the cards that I pull to trade for brightest blazing Branded King because it's a common from Cyberstorm Axis, so it's very, very obtainable. Anyway, it is now time. Let's get into our card opening. Alright, it is time. We are finally here. Let's go ahead and move our deck aside so it's not going to get in the way. Move the nice little field center we got, and we'll open up some packs. So we're going to set aside that pack. Oh, if you remember, we do like a $15 budget per week, but last week we only used $10 of that budget. One of these tins roughly MSRPs for $20, but right now they're going on TCG Player for like $15, and so I decided we can do this pack plus the entire tin, which adds up to roughly $15 total from the extra $5 that we saved last week. So we essentially banked $5 last time. We have 20, and now we're able to do an extra pack as well as the tin itself. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to open up this tin. I'm going to use this pen. Hopefully it works. It did. Look at that. Let's get all the packs out, and then we can start opening some stuff. What do we get for our promo? Anything cool? We got the Salamandrate Blaze Dragon. I'm pretty sure that's like not worth anything. So we're going to set that aside. Maybe that can just be traded for our Brightest Blazing Branded King. Anyway, here is the real goo. We got the 3 packs. We want the Lubellion. There's a couple of cards that we could get from this set that would be very beneficial to us. And in fact, I'm going to pull up the list really quick. All right, so in this pack, our main thing we're looking for is the Bestial the Bestial Lubellion. However, there are a couple other Bestials and Cashier Fenrir that can get us money to potentially trade for other things. There's the Bestial Druisworm, which we technically could play in our deck, but it's roughly $13 to $14 right now. It's not a requirement for our deck. It's more of like a side deck option. So if we get it, it's trade bait. We can get some good stuff out of that. Probably just a Lubellion right off of that. Fenrir is essentially a 1-for-1. If we get Fenrir, we get a Lubellion, which is super, super nice. Going down the list, the 3rd most expensive card in this set is the Lubellion, which is what we're looking for. It's roughly $10 to $11 right now. Honestly, not a terrible price. It's been worse, so I'm grateful for that. Going down the list, we got Destructive Daruma Cannon, roughly $6 $7. Kashtira Unicorn has gone up, and it's roughly a $6 card. I think I bought my playset at like $3 a couple months back, which is super, super nice, but that's besides the point. Runic Tip is roughly a $5 card. Bestial Serenir is actually another card we do want for our deck, and that is roughly $4 to $5-ish. And then from there, it kind of just goes down into like $3 and below, $1 and $2, and so on. I'll point out anything that we get if it's worthwhile. So these 3 are the packs that were in the tin that we just opened. This pack is the pack that I've been holding on to for probably a month now. So we're going to start with this. If the Lubellion is in here and I haven't opened it until now, I'm going to be very disappointed. We're going to go ahead and open it. No pack tricks or anything. I'm just going to do just hold it like that. I'm going to make sure everything looks good on the cameras. Digit jamming. The weather forecast. We could make a weather deck. That's kind of interesting. Terrors in the Hidden City. Therion Cross. Predaplant Buffoluslia or whatever. That, honestly, we could pivot into Predaplant at some point to try it out. So that might be something we hold off on the side. Sklash? I've never read the name of that card before. Exo Sisters Asophiel. Dinomorphia Frenzy. Alright. So the next cards are the important cards. So we're going to set this down. We've got 2 ultra rares and 2 secret rares. And then, what is this? Oh, that's the Dinomorphia Frenzy. I don't know why I put Asophiel over there. Labyrinth Setup. Therion Irregular. Melfi's Daring Contest. I love that little guy. Melfi Rabby. Labyrinth Archfiend. Gem Knight Quartz. Perfect Sync. A dual avatar card? I don't know what that archetype is. Let me know if you know what that archetype is. That seems interesting. Alright, now, the important cards. Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy. That is actually a super sick pull. I don't think it's on my list. It's not on my list, so it's less than $2, but it's still a great card. It's a good, very, very good pull. Probably one of the best ultra rares to pull. Wandering Griffin Rider. There we go for all your adventure deck rarity bumps. And then the ones we're looking for is the 2 secret rares. Here we go. Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous. Okay, so this card is still $2. And hey, look at that. We pulled one. That means we can play 3 now. Not a bad pull by any means. Not the Lubellion, but I am very happy to take that. And then our final secret rare of that pack is Floowandereeze in the Advent Adventure. That means there was 2 copies of this in the same tin. Gotta love it, right? Okay, on to the next 3 packs, which is the tin we just barely opened. I'm not going to do any more pack tricks. We know what a lot of the commons are in this set, so we're just going to go all the way down until we see the super, and then we'll get all excited. There's the weather forecast, Liberamancer Intervention, Baku the Beast Ninja, Blackfeather Whirlwind, Therion Empress Alacia. Therion stuff's interesting because that's a part of the Albaz lore, if you guys were wondering. Liberamancer Bonded, another Asophiel, Morphtronic Converter, and then next will be our ultra rares. We've got Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph Dragon, which was the cover card for a set, I believe. Zalamandar Catalyzer. No clue what that is. But here it is. The stuff we're looking for, the exciting part, the secret rares. Exo Sister Michaelis. So, Exo Sister Michaelis is actually... Oh, no, this isn't Martha. Michaelis is not worth anything. Dang. Michaelis, okay. Michaelis is cool. I mean, I like Exo Sisters. I have the Exo Sister deck, so that's cool. But not the Lubellion. We're still lurking. We're still searching. Our next secret rare is World Sea Dragon Zelantis. Really good card, once again, but not quite what we're looking for. There's another Predaplant, our nice band branded card. Libromancer, DDD Rebel King Leonidas, Gemnite Quartz, and Rika Concon. Next pack, we still got 4 more slots of secret rares that we could potentially get what we're looking for. Throw the garbage off to the side. Libromancer Intervention, Psychic Rover. That guy looks interesting. Is he in anything? Is he an archetype card? Look at him. He looks like he'd be a main character of something. Melfi Wally, Terrors in the Hidden City, Dinomorphia Brute, Amazonas Secret Arts, Reverse Jar. Our super is a Smoke Mosquito. And now, time for our 2 ultras. We've got... What the... Oh, this is a adventure card. Magicor Warrior of the Relics. You don't play it in adventure, I don't think. I mean, in the package anyway, but maybe like a pure adventure deck, you could maybe play it. Cool card nonetheless. Naturia Blessing. I don't actually know if this is ever used in any Naturia stuff, but there it is. Plant stuff, maybe. But what we're looking for is the secret, so here we go. Timaeus the United Dragon. I'm pretty sure this is a very unfortunate pull, but we still have one more in this pack. Runic Tip. Okay, we like to see that. That's actually a good pull. It's a $5 card. So that means we're building up to be able to do some trades. But yeah, Runic Tip, not a bad pull. I mean, it's not what we're looking for, but still could have been far worse. We'll put that right here, I guess. And then some more things. Returnia is a good card. Vadis is a good card in Exo. I mean, Exo Sisters is a fun deck. If you ever want to play a fun deck, it's pretty dang cheap right now. Pick up Exo Sisters. It's got a lot of play. It can play Dimension Shifter, so I mean, you can play Shifter. You're gonna win. You're gonna just easily win games, right? Libromancer Fireburst is our final pack. Digit Jamming. It's a big name. Just not gonna even try. Dinomorphia Alert. Dragoonity Senatus. Decisive Battle at Golgonda. This is another Albaz card. You can see him right there in the artwork. Very cool, very cool. Here we got Gary the Runic Fangs. Okay. We got one more super, which is Ice Jade Curse. This is very sad. Albaz lore card. We got, I think it's Ran Agarine, and she's looking at her dead mom. But what we're looking for is the ultras right now. Well, secrets, but ultras are next. We've got Illegal Knight, which is another adventure token card. And Immortal Dragon, which I don't know what it does or anything. I've never read this card in my life. Here it is. The final 2 cards that we care about. Kashtira Fenrir! Let's go! Awesome. That's such a good pull for us. Kashtira Fenrir. We're not going to use it obviously, but this is phenomenal trade bait. Like I said, it's currently at like a $13, $12 card. That's money. That's money we're winning. We still have one more secret though. So we have one more chance to get a Bestial, Lubellion, or a Saronir, whatever it may be. Hopefully it's something that we want. If not, we're still golden because we got the Fenrir. Let's go to the next one. Dynamite Power Load the Draco Slayer. That's a cool looking guy. Another band branded card. Some more things. Terrors of the Overroot. But look at that. Not a bad tin by any means though. That tin had both Runic Tip and Fenrir. So, I mean, in theory, right, this is a $12 card and a $5 card, so it's like a $17 value. If you want to look at it that way, we profited. Like, that pays for the 10. The other pack, that was just a pack by itself, had the Cartesia and the Dark, and I think that might pay for that one pack by itself. So, and like value-wise, we plussed, I would say. So, now we've got some interesting things to do. We've got some decks to be building, or decks to be modifying. We will be adding this third copy of Cartesia, which is super nice. I'm very happy to have the third copy. I was planning on just adding in an ultra rare at some point, but I ended up throwing that in the Dogmatica deck. So it's nice to have another copy. I'll probably swap the ultra in this one though. But we do have 2 cards that can potentially get us a Lubellion if we can find some people to trade with. So that's what we'll be doing. We'll be trading, we'll be selling, we'll be doing something. We'll theoretically should be able to have the Lubellion that we're looking for. But also we should be able to get that Brightest Blazing Branded King with something else that we have pulled here. I'm sure that something here can get us the I can't even speak, dude. The Brightest Blazing Branded King. Anyway, it's going to be a bit before I can get all that stuff. So from here until then, here's a nice cut. For you, it's a second. For me, it could be a week or more. See you guys then. Alright, so it has been a couple weeks, probably 2 weeks since I recorded that last little bit. After I opened up the Fenrir, I took said Fenrir and Runic Tip and other cards to trade, and here are the results. Also, something big happened in between the recording of me getting the Fenrir and me recording this right now. As you can tell, we're taking things out of our deck that we don't really want to be taken out. Because, of course, Branded Fusion, I can't get that in there. Branded Fusion went to 1 on the Forbidden and Limited list. So, we are down 2 copies of Branded Fusion. As I probably said in that previous thing, I was going to plan to trade my Cashier of Fenrir for a copy of the Bestial Lubellion. Ever since the ban list came out, my whole thinking and mind frame kind of flip-flopped on what I should be doing with the way I'm building my deck currently. I do still want to get Lubellion eventually, but it's nowhere near the priority, I think, anymore. And so, with that Runic Tip and Lubellion, I still did some trading. And I was able to secure us a playset of branded opening with that Runic Tip and Cashier Fenrir. At the time of the trade, these are roughly $5 to $6 a piece. I don't know what they are right now. I mean, I literally traded yesterday for them, so they probably haven't gone anywhere. That said, I do expect a branded opening to be going up in the future, unless we happen to get a reprint of this card in, what is that big set? The Bonanza, Quarter Century Bonanza. So if you do not own a copy of branded opening, you may want to look into securing yourself 3 copies of it, especially because this wasn't hit on the banned list, just like where Branded Fusion was, opening was not, and in the OCG, it is at 1, and so the fact they didn't hit it here, I don't think it's ever going to be hit. I think it'll be always at 3, so I do recommend looking into getting a copy of branded opening, unless you're willing to just hopefully wait that it will be in Bonanza. I mean, $5 isn't a terribly expensive card, and if we're doing the thing where we put $15 into the game, in this case, every video, you might be doing it every week or every other week or whatever, then you might look into getting a copy of branded opening. So, keep that in mind. Branded opening probably will be going up. I don't know if it will or not. I'm just assuming. And also, it's the consistency that our deck needs, and so I felt that it was definitely time because of our loss of Branded Fusion. Yeah, so we did trade the Runic Tip and the Cashier Fenrir for these, and we did get one extra thing. We got a copy of Brightest Blazing Branded King, as you saw in that opening with the Master Duel clip. I do think this card is phenomenal, and I traded for this. I traded the owner of my card store. I gave him a card. I basically just let him pick whatever, and he gave me the card, and then he instantly just gave me the card back because he's a good guy. He's way too nice. I don't remember what he picked. I think it was the Morphtronic thing. That's still in this pile of stuff. There it is, because he just threw it back at me. And that brings me to my next thing, is that this is just in general. This is general life advice from Cole. Just don't be a jerk. Don't be a complete jerk to people. Be very nice, be very open and kind with people, share what you have, share what you don't need, and hey, every now and then it comes back to you and you get some bonuses like a copy of Brightest Blazing Branded King. So ultimate goal, just don't be a dick. Okay. So these are the 4 cards we'll be adding into this week. Sadly, we know for a fact we're taking out our 2 copies of Branded Fusion. We did pull that 3rd copy of Blazing Cartesia, which I may or may not be putting into the deck, putting out of the deck. I don't know. I'm still kind of undecided. So from here, I'm basically going to be doing some deck building. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but like I said, we're going to go deck building. We have the Dramaturge still. I don't think that's going to make it in, but my idea and goal is to keep this 40, 41 cards, maybe 42. If we just threw the 3 openings in, then it's instantly 42. And I want Brightest Blazing Branded King as well. In our main deck, I don't really want to side deck that. And so, yeah, keeping all that in mind, I want to try to stay at 40, under 40, slightly above 40. That's the goal. So I will start deck building this. I also want to prepare a side deck, and so our side deck will mostly be things like the kaijus that we took out, the effect veilers, the ghost ogres, dimensional barrier, all things basically from the structure deck, because we didn't necessarily get anything from the tins that I think should be going. There was one card, it was the Terrors of the Underroot, I believe is what it's called. It's not the worst card in the world, and if we need another card for our side deck, I guess we could throw it in. Granted, I don't know if I'd ever side it. It's a weird, unique piece of removal, but regardless, this is where we are at right now. I'm very sad about Branded Fusion going to 1. It is what it is. We take it, we leave, and we do our best to build the deck better. So, next time, for you, it's a second. For me, I don't know how long it's going to be before I get done building this. So, see you guys in just a second. Alright, I cooked up some deck lists that I'm very excited to show you all. I will say, prefacing some of the card choices, and I'll also bring this up too. I decided to go 45 cards. I just couldn't help it. There's just too many things. For example, we'll get into it, but I want to keep the Edgem chain package. Keeping things like Dark Ruler no more is just super good, especially because we can side them out later on. But without further ado, I was prefacing this with yeah, okay. So I was looking at all of the branded cards recently, and I was reading them, and I was trying to decide, like, is there anything that we're missing? Is there something that we haven't been playing that we just kind of like put off to the side, don't really look at it? The first thing, and it's on my deck list, but the first thing I saw was Branded Bond. I don't know if you guys have seen this card before. Branded Bond. It comes in the structure deck, actually. Now you can't focus on my face. There we go. Comes in the structure deck, and it is interesting. It's not the greatest card in the world, but it can lead to interesting things like board breaking. Granted, like I said, that's not on our deck list, and if we ever do go that board breaker route that I was talking about, I think last episode, then that could be a potential option. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the list. You'll see the card that I'm talking about, and it kind of covers a lot of our issues with the deck currently. There's still one issue it doesn't cover, but like, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't cover that issue. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. We got our main deck, our extra deck, and our side deck. We'll do side deck last, which is very standard. Granted, there's one spicy pick that I chose from the tin openings, so we'll do that last. But let's start with our main deck. We've got, and we're gonna do it in this little format because I know a lot of people do this format, and I want to see how it looks on camera during the editing phase. Anyway, yes, we've got 3 copies of Fallen of Albaz. As I look straight up at the camera to make sure I get this all lined up perfectly. Yeah, that's probably pretty good. 3 copies of Fallen of Albaz. I do think that we can't cut this. I think we can't go down to 2. I've been in too many grind game situations where I need 3 copies. I don't know. I'm not willing to take it out at this point. I know some people are, especially because Branded Fusion's going down to 1, as we know. I don't think we take it out still, because there's just so many opportunities we can use its effect, as well as other things that use itself as I don't know. We can't take it out, I don't think. As of right now, the other thing I don't think we can cut on is Aluber, the Jester of Despia. Now, Aluber is admittedly, it's good card, no doubt. It gets us the Branded Fusion, the one of now, and it will continue to be good. However, I could see us cutting this card to 2 in the future in place of a copy of Guiding Quem the Virtuous, which we do know is going to be in the tins this year, so that's hopefully where we're going to be able to pick that up. But yeah, so there's the Aluber, that stays. The other thing I think stays to 3 is Albion the Shrouded Dragon, and there's a couple reasons why I think Albion is a great card at 3. Obviously, it's the Upstart Goblin, it counts as Fallen of Albaz in some situations, which does come up occasionally, but most importantly, in a situation where you do need to side cards out, it's honestly a really good side out card because you don't necessarily miss it when it's not there, but you also like to see it in your opening hand. It's a really weird card because of those specific details. Next up, we got 2 copies of Springen's Kit. I think 2 copies is I don't know if I want to say ideal, especially now since we got branded opening. I still think 2 is good, especially because we only have 1 branded fusion, so it's going to be banished occasionally probably, and so we need to be able to retrieve that branded fusion with our Kit. Kit also can get it from the graveyard, which is probably where it's going to be most of the time, so Kit is going to be clutch, I think. I have not done it yet, but I think it will be clutch, so we'll have to keep that in mind. I'm still only on 2 copies of Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous. I think 3 isn't a bad idea, but if I'm trying to keep this deck low, I don't think I need 3. There's something else later on that will help us recur this, which is going to be great, and I'll talk about that even more so in depth when we get there. I'm still on 2 copies of Mercurier. I guess I should probably start stacking them in the middle too, maybe? I don't know. We'll do it like this, and then we get the 1-ofs. The 1-ofs will go in the middle. That'll look nice. 2 copies of Mercurier. I don't know. This could be at 1, honestly. We don't run Allure of Darkness. Spoiler alert. You haven't seen me get it. So 2 Mercurier is not the greatest, but it's also not the worst thing. Because we don't have the Bestial Lubellion, having 2 will make it so that we see it occasionally in our opening hand, which is a benefit, as well as later on you'll see that we've got 2 copies of Branded Law still because we don't have the Lubellion, so we've got more ways to get to this. Also, it is nice to banish it off of something like Gold Sark, but we still want to see it in our hand if we want, so we can get the monster negate. So I think 2 still works for now. And then for the 1-of monsters, we got 1 Ad Libitum. I think that'll stay even after we get Quem, but because we don't have Quem, it's pretty necessary in my opinion. 1 copy of Despian Tragedy, which just makes sense. It searches the Aluber, gets us the branded fusion essentially. And now that it pretty much covers the monsters, there's a couple things later on, the Edgem Chain package, basically. And we'll go into the spells. So we got 3 copies of Fusion Deployment, which gets us to our Cartesia. It can also get us to an Albaz to do some clever things by going second, Fusion Deployment, summoning Albaz, using their board to fuse with Albaz. They have to respond to that or else they're not going to be able to do anything. So that's best case scenario for us, essentially. Fusion Deployment is such a good card. It's so good in this deck. Now the new card. 3 copies of Branded Opening. This card is phenomenal. It gets even better if we get a copy of Guiding Quem the Virtuous, because that counts as Dogmatica, or yes, it does, but it specifically counts as a Despia as well, which is why Branded Opening is so good for us in that very specific circumstance. However, for the time being, it's basically just our Aluber searcher. It searches out Aluber, gets us to Branded Fusion, because we need more ways to get to Branded Fusion. But there is one more key thing that Branded Opening does that tends to be overlooked. I noticed one person in the comments said that if I had Branded Opening, I could have won, which is very true, but alas, it was not on my deck last time. That's true though. Branded Opening could indeed win us the game because it can protect our fusion monsters. We can, if our fusion monsters are going to be destroyed, we can instead banish our Branded Opening and protect our monsters essentially. Say we're to Branded Mirror Match and they use the Mirror Jade effect in the graveyard to destroy our board in the end phase. We just banish our Branded Opening and bada bing bada bang, our fusions stay. So perfect, super great card. It's a 3-of for sure in any branded deck, and like I said earlier, look into getting a copy for yourself just in case you don't already have one, because I think the price will be going up. Moving into 2-ofs, we've got 2 copies of Branded Lost, like I said. We don't have Lubellion, so we need to see it more often. It's just, I think it's just how it goes. We can search it off of other things like Kit, for example, but regardless, I don't want to be searching it if I don't have the direct search with Lubellion. I just want to open it. 1 copy of Branded in White. Because we don't have fusion, we need more fusion power, so Branded in White is just the natural thing that we do. I'm still testing it. I still don't know if I love the card. It has came in clutch occasionally, but I digress. One copy of Branded in red. It's our go-to set, but we've got more cards to set potentially with our Albion we'll get into in just a second. As you know, the brightest blazing Branded King. Mouthful of name, but Branded in red is pretty much our go-to. It's so super good. We search it. We can even use it on our turn if we're going second if we need to. It's great. High Spirits is still a phenomenal card. It gets us to things that we don't normally have access to, like a Blazing Cartesia. If we do eventually get Quem, it can get us a Quem. It can even get us an Albaz if we just want an Albaz. It can get us a Mercurier if we want a Mercurier. You know, there's so many things that this can do. And of course, being able to add it back at the end phase if we haven't used its other effect, and just having a free discard for whenever we need it. It's super good. I've gone into grind games before where I just constantly had High Spirits in my hand and was able to keep on just using as a discard for like an Albaz cost, for example. And it was super great because of that. And then sadly, our last one of Fusion is our Branded Fusion. I'm just as broken up as you all are. Don't worry. We're still gaming. We're still going to be good. We're okay. We'll get through this together. Moving into our traps. As you know, we've got our Branded Retribution, which is pretty standard. It gets even better if we have the Bestial package, the Serenir, for example. But even without, it's not bad, especially because Branded Fusion's at 1. It potentially can be another copy of Branded Fusion if we need it for a turn 3 or 4 or so on. Alright, here's the spice. As you know, I love this card, Brightest Blazing Branded King. It's here to be our Omni Negate for everything on the board, except for our card. Except one of our cards. That's face up. Super great. I don't need to talk more about that. You saw the Master Duel thing. It's phenomenal. And here is part of the first spice. We've got Branded Sword. Branded Sword is interesting. I'll go ahead and read it for you all. It's banish any number of branded spell traps from your graveyard and special summon that many Ice Blade tokens. They're level 8, attack 2500, defense 2000, which probably won't come up, but like, hey, it could come up as a token thing, and maybe we swing for game with tokens, or we protect our board with tokens. Who knows? Probably won't come up, but if it does, it does. This is the part that I'm excited about, which is you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one of your banished monsters that is Fallen of Albaz or mentions it, and add that monster to your hand. That one. That is the effect that will come in clutch, I think, because Albaz gets banished a lot. If we use Branded in red on our Cartesia, that'll get banished. We only have 2 of them. We want Cartesia to not be banished. Future-proofing the deck for Guiding Quem. We probably will only be playing 1 copy of Quem. If that gets banished, then it's gone. Heck, if Quem goes to the graveyard, then it's an issue. And so, I have figured out the card that saves all of that. Because we don't have the Bestial Lubellion, we've been worried about what our light target can be. And here it is. It is the Golden Sword Soul. This card comes in the structure deck, if you guys didn't know. It's phenomenal. It does so many good things for us, especially because we don't have Lubellion. We can send it with Branded Fusion with Albaz to go into our Albion line, eventually get into the Lubellion stuff. But that's not all it does. It does some clever things. I'll go ahead and read it to you. When a monster declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, negate that attack. Just in and of itself can protect you from being OTK'd. Potentially can be good against something like Tenpai, for example, which I do play against because one of my friends at locals plays Tenpai. Anyway, moving on. Then, if you control a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material, you can destroy the monster that declared the attack. So once again, that hits Tenpai, and really anything. It's just a cool little battle phase hand trap. But it does more. If a monster is banished face up, except during the damage step, you can banish this card from your field or graveyard, special summon 1 light spellcaster monster from your hand or graveyard whose attack equals its own defense. Pretty cool. So, that gets us to our Cartesias in our graveyard, our potential future Quems that will be in the graveyard, all in one go. And I saw this incredible combo when I pulled out all of the branded cards, and I was, like I said, I was looking at them. I was reading Golden Sword Soul, and I was like, that's not a bad target at all for a branded fusion as a light target. Like, that's super, super solid. And I thought it was good, and I was like, it's cool because you can special summon a Cartesia, for example. And then I saw a crazy YouTube video that showed off how Golden Sword Soul basically won him the game, where they were able to summon a Cartesia. Cartesia will do some fusion stuff. It banishes itself, and they had branded sword. They banished the branded sword, added this back to hand, and then they special summoned it and negated an attack, and was essentially able to win the game because they prevented their opponent from OTKing them. Don't sleep on the Golden Sword Soul. I have yet to test with it, but after seeing that combo, I was convinced that it must go into the deck. At that point, I was like, okay, I'm down for another light target because I only have the 2 Cartesia, and there it is. Golden Sword Soul saves the day. Who knew? Let's move on. We've got 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. You all know what this does. Going second, it basically makes our opponent not have fun anymore. Next, we've got the Ejim Chain package, our 2 copies of Polymerization, our Fright for Patchwork, 2 copies of that, 2 copies of Ejim Chain. This is just good. I gushed about this package last week. I will continue to gush about it because I'm sure we'll see it more this time. I normally say week, granted these videos take like months to get out. Forgive me for saying week every time. Alright, the last 3 cards, we got one of our Golden Sarcophagus, Foolish Burial. Both of those essentially get us to Branded Fusion if we don't have it already. And then Call by the Grave, because we hope and pray that we open this when our opponent has Ash Blossom. And that is the main deck. So let's move into the extra deck. The extra deck is honestly exactly the same from last week. Nothing's changed. We got the 2 Mirror Jades. We've got our 2 copies. They're not sorted, sorry everybody. 2 copies of Albion. The 2 copies of Lubellion, which honestly could go down to 1 copy now that we do have that light target to fusion summon. For the time being, I think we'll just leave it. And I think that pretty much takes up all of our 2-ofs. So let's move into our 1-ofs. We have the Alba Lenitus, which is great against our Tenpai friend. Titaniclad, which is good really in any situation, will be better with Whem. Rinbrum, which is just super, super good all around. We need to be using it more as an actual fusion summon, as well as just sending it to graveyard, so we'll keep all that in mind. And Grand Guignol, just 1 copy of Grand Guignol, because Cartesia has to do some fusion shenanigans, get the ad libitum in the graveyard. And now, oh, I guess Masquerade as well. Yeah, Masquerade wins games. I played a game earlier with my just normal branded deck. We went to game 3, and I summoned Masquerade on their turn, and they couldn't play because, well, time limit, right? Alright, last 3 or 4 cards we've got is the Dragos Tapelia, we've got the Guardian Chimera, oh, forgive me, there's a Despian Queritus, that's also part of the archetypes, I guess. And then Magnum the Reliever. All good things. Let's move into what I'm rocking for the extra deck. Excuse me, the side deck. We've got 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier, because Dimensional Barrier is a blowout, especially to Tenpai. I feel like I'm targeting Tenpai, and there's another card in here that does target Tenpai, so I apologize, but I'm not trying to target Tenpai, but in a way I am, almost, I don't know. 3 copies of Effect Veiler because they came in the structure deck, same with the Ghost Ogre, and of course we're going to need to run them. If there's something that essentially dies to a monster negate going first, like they lose the game because their monster got negated, and we'll probably decide an Effect Veiler because that just makes sense. We've got 4 Kaijus, the 2 Thunders and 2 Radians. We've got our 1 copy of Sprint if we need to go board breaker route and have something to get on their turn with like a Rinbrum effect, essentially summon the Albaz off of Rinbrum, and then boom, Sprint can just crazy stuff. Anyway, last card is our side deck card. This is something we pulled from the tins. I think it's kind of cheeky. I think it's very, very gimmicky. It will not last that long, but I reveal to you the Smoke Mosquito. Let me read Smoke Mosquito. I'm gonna say that name so horribly all the time. During damage calculation, if you would take battle damage from an opponent's monster's attack, quick effect. You can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, the damage you take from that battle is halved. Also, end the battle phase after damage step. Sorry, Tenpai. It's got something else, but it's like tuner stuff because it changes levels and things. Yeah, Smoke Mosquito will be crazy if we happen to draw that going against Tenpai. So, look forward to that. I'm going to go ahead and do a little test hand to see how this kind of plays through, and we'll go from there. Let me get this deck shuffled, and we'll see what happens. Alright, that ought to be sufficient. Let's go ahead. We'll cut the deck 3 ways. We'll put down our 5 and pretend we're going first, because that's what we want to do, is go first. Let me just line up the deck with the spots. That looks about good on the camera. Let's see what our opening hand is. We've got a Branded Lost, that's why we're running 2. Albion, super good, that's at 3. That's not good when we see 2. Fusion Deployment, and Branded in red. Alright, so in all honesty, this is not the greatest hand, and it makes you think really hard. I'll be completely transparent with you all. This is my 3rd attempt at trying to make this work in a very optimal way. There's the easy out. You can honestly just do the Albion to get yourself a new card and then hope it's something playable. But we're going to go the hard way because I'm trying to get this right so we can actually do it. So forgive me if there is an over amount of cuts from here and also slightly before this as well. Anyway, I'm going to continue with what I was doing earlier, which was activating Fusion Deployment, revealing the Grand Guignol to special summon a Cartesia from my deck. There she is. Next up, activate Branded Lost so we don't forget about that. And this is probably one of the first spots where it's very like, I don't know what I do here. Do we go Albion effect, sending this to special summon it itself to make it an Albaz, so you can go into Albaz things? Or do you just fuse and make Grand Guignol here so you can keep the Branded in red in your hand? It's probably honestly what you do, I think. After 3 times, I think that's probably the best move. Or do you just go for the Gamba and make the Albion get a new card? We're going to go with the Cartesia Fusion itself and the Albion in my hand into a copy of Grand Guignol the Dusk Dragon. And so yeah, we go Grand Guignol Chainlink 1 and Branded Lost Chainlink 2. Branded Lost is going to search us a copy of, where is she? The Spriggan's kit. I guess it's not the, it's just Spriggan's kit. We'll search the kit, and then we will go Grand Guignol sending. Now, this could be anything really. This could be the Ad Libitum. It could be something from your extra deck if you want to get the Albion engraved this way. Because we have the Branded in red, I think I feel obligated to send the Ad Libitum, just so that that option is alive. And then we use our normal summon for the turn. Normal summon the kit, activate the kit, searching ourselves our only copy of Branded Fusion, and shuffling back probably the Albion. This admittedly could still get us that one random card if we want to go that route, and then we could just search the Branded in red if that's what we want to do. And this decision can be made a lot easier based on what you're playing, because if you want to search something off of Albion in the end phase and you know what you're playing, it might be better to get a Brightest Blazing Branded King or the Branded in red. We're just going to send back the Albion without getting the random draw, and then hopefully trying to get to a point where we can have both Branded in red and Brightest Blazing Branded King. And by doing so, we're going to activate the Branded Fusion, which will go ahead and send us the Fallen of Albaz. We're going to send the Golden Sword Soul as well, because we don't necessarily want to discard anything. So we'll do that. We'll make, where is it? The Albion. We can go Albion effect here to fuse using our Fallen of Albaz by banishing itself, as well as the Grand Guignol to make a copy of Mirror Jade. I'm not worrying about zones right now, by the way. I wouldn't be placing them like this probably. Just letting you know if you were curious. Because something was banished, we can activate our Golden Sword Soul by banishing itself to special back our copy of Cartesia so that we can have access to it for our next turn, which is ideally where you end up searching the copy of Mercurier. So, we've got a couple of different options. This is probably the best board I could think of with this, with that 5-card hand that I had to begin with. We don't have any copies of, well, we do, technically. We have Albion, which is technically an Albaz engrave, but not Albaz proper, which get us a fusion summon in the end phase. But, or not the end phase, but our opponent's turn with the Renbrum effect. So, we can use our Mirror Jade effect on our turn, so we can get a copy of Albion into our grave, which can set us another copy of a branded card, Brightest Blazing Branded King, or whatever it might be. If you want Branded Sword, I guess you could go for that too. We have the branded in red in our hand with the Ad Libitum, which almost guarantees us another Mirror Jade effect, which is super, super good. If we had Guiding Quem in our deck, let me tell you, this board would be even better because we'd be able to do some crazy things. But we don't. We do not have Guiding Quem, so we have to sit with that fact that we do not have Guiding Quem. And that's why this decision is so much harder if we banish our kit or if we just stay with our copy of Mirror Jade. I'm going to try to simulate both of them. Let's simulate both of what we could potentially happen, starting with activating the Mirror Jade, banishing our copy of kit by sending. I didn't do this originally. I should have sent first. Sending a Albion from our extra deck, and then we banish the kit. Then we can go ahead and set our copy of Branded Red. I'll just set it like this so you know it's supposed to be set. We can proceed to the end phase, activate the Albion in our graveyard, which can grab us a copy of Brightest Blazing Branded King, and set that to our side of the field. So there's a couple of things, and this is a bit of a reactionary board essentially. Based on what your opponent does, you want to react accordingly. If you don't have Mirror Jade online, and you got Brightest Blazing Branded King, so you want to get your other effects off before you have to activate Brightest Blazing Branded King, unless you absolutely need to, then you just go for it. However, you can chain to your Brightest Blazing Branded King. You can activate itself, targeting something you wouldn't use to fuse, like this one, or, you know, whatever, and then that can go off. But let's just pretend like we're saving it for the very, very end. It's going to be the blowout card. And so we'll go ahead and do our normal stuff here, which can honestly change a little bit based on with what we have. We have an option to make Dragos Tapelia using these two. We could even use it doing this, just depending on whatever we feel like. And our Branded Red could at any time get us this copy of Ad Libitum, and we fuse with things on our board. So we want to do these two, so that way Albion will be in graveyard for sure to make the Dragos Tapelia. And then we can use our Dragos Tapelia effect, and then at any point we can activate our... we could have also searched off a Branded Lost there, which would be our copy of Mercurier. There's the Mercurier. It's in our hand, ready to be used at any point. We can go Branded in red, targeting the Ad Libitum, adding it back to our hand. Theoretically, after we've used our Dragos Tapelia, we banish all of these. Ad Libitum will bring back our Mirror Jade. And then we get one more banish. We got our Monster Negate, and we've got our Brightest Blazing Branded King at any point with only one copy of, or with only one Mirror Jade on our field, and we've already used our Branded Lost, so we don't need to worry about that being negated. So we've got a blowout card, and we've got a banishment. So that's still pretty good. There's still a lot of things going on there. I forgot to fusion the Guardian Chimera with the Branded Red. So yeah, we'd use the Guardian Chimera. It's already used. That's already used. Brightest Blazing Branded King can come up and do some things here too. So that is essentially one option that we have. I'm going to go ahead and try to get back to that board state that we had a second ago. Alright, so in comparison, if we didn't use our Mirror Jade effect on our turn, we would set our copy of Branded in red. There it is. I'm going to do the sideways thing so you know. And we don't have any end phase effects, unfortunately, because we don't have any Albions in the graveyard. So we essentially we're down at Brightest Blazing Branded King. And we go to our opponent's turn. When we get to the main phase, they commit something to the board. We can fuse away these two, getting our Albion in graveyard, and making a Dragos Tapelia. Branded Lost can search us that copy of Mercurier right there. And at some point we can go branded in red, targeting the ad libitum. At some point after we've already used the Mirror Jade Banish, fusing these away to make the Guardian Chimera. And then summon the Mirror Jade back with our ad libitum. So, essentially, the only difference between the two boards is that I still think the other board was better. We get 2 Mirror Jade Banishes on our opponent's turn, which is really, really good. But having Brightest Blazing Branded King in addition to just 1 Mirror Jade Banish, I think that's even better. You do keep the Dragos Apelia on your board this way as well. So it might be nice to just have a body. Granted, having a 33 and a 3000 on your board is already pretty big. I don't think 27 is really going to change that much. So I think I'd still opt for that first route going for the Brightest Blazing Branded King. Now, all the way back from the very start of this test hand, we could have just done the Gamba with the Albion and seen what we got. We could have just top decked the Branded Fusion because we're so good, but you never know what you're going to get. And I'm sure that was a mess for you to watch. I really hope I was able to edit that cohesively so that you could understand what was actually happening here. It's a bit of a mess. It took my brain a little bit to process everything and figure out how everything was happening. But yes, I do really like the golden sword, so I think it's very, very good for us, especially because we don't have that Lubellion, so we can do a lot of really cool things for us. I should be showing something else that actually did something that test hand. So I will be trying this out. You'll see this hopefully pop up in the duels that you'll see right after this section, and hopefully it works out really well for me. So I'm going to do some more tests by myself so that I can actually get practice with this new version of the deck. That way I just don't go into the duels blind. But without further ado, I think it's time. I've yapped enough. Let's go ahead and get to locals and see what we can do with this deck at our locals and do some duels. We'll see you guys there. Alright, here we go. I've got a game for you against Marincess. Now, this is a best of 3, but I'm only going to be showing this game. I win the die roll, and I decide to go first. My opening hand is a Polymerization, Edgem Chain, Despian Tragedy, a Luber the Jester of Despia, and a Tri-Brigade Mercurier. Now, I'm planning on dropping the Polymerization, so I'm really just trying to decide what should be my target to fuse into. I don't necessarily know what I should be doing here, if I'm being completely honest. I do know that I want a fusion so that I can use it as material later on for Mirror Jade, and that's kind of where my thought process goes. I go Poly, sending the Edgem Chain and the Despian Tragedy so that I can get their effects in the graveyard, and I make the Masquerade. Masquerade is, like I said, is more or less just fodder to become a Mirror Jade later on. I activate a Despian Tragedy as Chainlink 1 and Edgem Chain as Chainlink 2 to do the searches. I grab an Ad Libitum and a Fright for Patchwork off of the Tragedy and the Edgem Chain. More so because I already have the Aluber, and so I figure I might as well just grab the Ad Lib as discard later. And I also used my Edgem Chain and Despian Tragedy as more of an Ash Blossom check. Anyway, I normal summon the Aluber, activate its effect, and search for a branded spell or trap. I grab the branded fusion, as you pretty much always do with the Aluber, especially now where branded fusion is at 1. I continue to do more Ash Blossom checks by dropping the Fright for Patchwork to search for another copy of Polymerization and Edgem Chain. No Ash Blossoms in sight, so it seems like I should have a pretty dang good combo from here. I drop another Polymerization so that I can try to check for more potential things. And also, I figure I might as well get the best use of my material by getting the Masquerade into the graveyard and getting one more piece of interaction on board, which happens to be the Magnum or Reliever. I really do love that Magnum the Reliever in the with the Edgem Chain package. I think they go very well together hand in hand. Anyway, on the summon, I activate the Reliever effect so I can shuffle my deck, throw a Polymerization or Fusion card on the bottom of it, and draw 1 card. I throw down the Polymerization, I draw 1, which happened to be a Spriggan's Kit. Anyway, I proceed here. I go Branded Fusion. That gets me the thumbs up, and I continue to go as much as I can by using the Golden Sword Soul and the Fallen of Albaz. This is kind of my go-to thing. I've been really liking the Golden Sword Soul a lot, and honestly, since I've been using it, I've not missed Lubellion as much. I go into Albion with the Golden Sword Soul and the Albaz. I go Albion effect to fuse using that Fallen of Albaz and the Masquerade in my graveyard to make a Mirror Jade so I don't have to use any discard. I don't want to do any discard because I have the kit in my hand and I figured I might as well get some more branded cards off of kit. I special summon the kit and search for a copy of Branded Lost to protect any fusions and also get more things that mention Fallen of Albaz for my deck. I activate the Mirror Jade effect to send a copy of Albion to the graveyard, just so I can have the Albion in the graveyard, and then I banish my own kit. I activate the Branded Lost. I proceed to end phase from here, and I use only the Albion effect. I have the Ad Libitum in my graveyard, which is very, very nice, so I go Albion effect to set a copy of Branded in red. So from here, my end board isn't honestly the greatest. I've got the Magnum Reliever effect, which is available. I've got Branded in red, and Branded Lost to search for Mercurier. That way I can make a new Mirror Jade, or not new Mirror Jade, but resummon the Mirror Jade with the Ad Libitum, and also do a Guardian Chimera with the Branded in red. My opponent starts with an infinite impermanence targeting the Magnum Reliever to make it so that I don't get its effects, and they use, I believe this is called Pascalis, and use its effect and summons the Blue Tang. And on the summon, I decide that I need to get rid of these materials. I need to make sure they can't do their link plays because they recur so much from their graveyard, and they also need their link ones. I don't know which one it is. It's either Blue Slug or something like that. And they can't make that if they've already committed their normal summon and a special summon. So I go Branded in red, targeted the Ad Libitum to fuse using my copy of Mirror Jade and Albion. Now, this is kind of an interesting decision. I chose the Albion instead of the Aluber, more so that way if Aluber gets into the graveyard, I can use its effect later on, which doesn't come up super often, but it can. Regardless, I think I probably should have kept the Albion, but it doesn't necessarily matter for this duel. Anyway, activate Guardian Chimera's effect to draw one since I used the Ad Libitum, and then destroy the 2 monsters that my opponent has summoned. And then I go Ad Libitum Chain Link 2 to target the Mirror Jade and special summon it back from the banishment. From this point, it seemed like me destroying the 2 Marincess monsters was indeed the right call, because now my opponent has to end off something else that they don't necessarily want. I don't think or know off the top of my head if they have any Marincess stuff to go from here, but they do have some other things they can do. Anyway, they activate a Triple Tactics Talents to take the Mirror Jade. I don't necessarily know what to do here. I'm a little lost. Speaking of lost, I think I forgot to activate the Branded Lost. I decided to chain the Mirror Jade because I might as well get some value out of it. I send the Albalenitus to search for a fusion or polymerization card in the end phase, and I banish my own Aluber, and I pass over my Mirror Jade reluctantly. They activate Agarine effect to discard the Marincess Seahorse and special summon itself and also create a token. They use said token and Agarine to synchro summon into a copy of Supreme Sovereign Changring, Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Changying. There we go. He uses my Mirror Jade in the battle phase to swing over Guardian Chimera, and then he goes Changying swinging into Magnum Reliever. My opponent goes to main phase 2 and is trying to find a way to potentially use this Mirror Jade as material to get rid of it. And unfortunately for them, they are unable to think of anything, and so I get my Mirror Jade back in the end phase, along with a couple of other graveyard effects, like my Albalenitus. I end up grabbing the Fusion Deployment so that I can make a Cartesia in my next turn, and lo and behold, my top deck for my turn is also Fusion Deployment, so now I've got 2 copies of it in my hand. You gotta love that, how that just happens every now and then, but hey, that's Yu-Gi-Oh! In the draw phase, I activate Branded Opening, discarding that second copy of Fusion Deployment, so that I can special summon a Despia monster from my deck. I special the Aluber from my deck, and I go Aluber effect to search for a Branded Spell or Trap. I decide to add the Brightest Blazing Branded King as follow-up, just in case I am unable to take out my opponent here, and I play the Fusion Deployment, revealing a copy of Granguignol the Dust Dragon. That's right, I do know how to say the proper name, I just think it's funnier to say Granguignol. Anyway, I summon the Cartesia from my deck. I activate Cartesia to fuse here, opting to use the Aluber and itself to make a Despian Querites. My thought process here is that I can use Querites' effect to make Changying's attack 0. I also activate the Branded Lost to grab a copy of Albion, the Branded Dragon, from my deck as well. I just immediately shotgun the Albion as soon as I get it to my hand, so I can dump a copy of Branded Retribution from my deck to my graveyard and search for a copy, or not search, but get the free draw. I activate Branded Retribution here to banish itself and target a copy of Branded Fusion in my graveyard to add it back to my hand. Now, here is where some misplays have happened. Changing has a trigger effect where if I banish something, he can also banish something from any graveyard and something on the field. And we treat it here as a quick effect instead of a trigger effect. And so that causes quite a lot of confusion here. However, for the rest of this duel, we just treat it as a quick effect. It doesn't necessarily change the outcome, it just makes the outcome a little harder to get to. I decided to chain Despian Queritus as well right here to make all currently on the field non-level 8 or higher fusions a 0 attack. My idea here is that Changing will go down to 0, its effect is not negated, but it goes down to 0 here, and then as Branded Retribution gets banished, it gains the 100 attack from that. So that way it's only at 100 attack instead of the massive 3,000, 600, 700 or whatever it was. Because Changing is quote-unquote a quick effect at this moment, he targets the Branded Fusion to banish it, as well as something on the field, which is the Mirror Jade. I always activate Mirror Jade effect, so I go ahead and do it, so that in the end phase I can blow up the board. At this moment is when I realized that even though I treated Changing as a quick effect, I had the Mercurier in my hand, I could have negated it, I'm just a fool. 2 cards have been banished since Changing's effect activated, and Despian Queritus' effect resolved. So we're not entirely sure how this interaction works out, but we're pretty sure that Changing only gains the attack after its attack went down to 0, so at this point it should only be at 200. It's still reducing my monster's attack by all of the different banished number, but the way we come up with it is that we swing 16 into the 200, and hopefully that is exactly how it's supposed to go. We're not, like I said, we're not entirely sure that that's how the interaction works, but I'm pretty sure that that's roughly how the interaction works. Regardless, even if it didn't necessarily work like that, then I still think we're okay because we should have a higher attack than the Changing. I go to main phase 2 and set 1, which isn't actually the Brightest Blazing Branded King, it's a branded sword that I top decked off of the Albion. I don't have any effects in my graveyard, unfortunately, so I pass to my opponent and hope that they do not top deck playable. And they do have something, actually. They normal summon a Seahorse, they link, and at this point, because I've got the Golden Sword Soul in my graveyard and the Cartesia in my graveyard, I'm just sitting here waiting and wishing that they're going to be banishing something. I'm pretty sure that they will be, knowing how their deck works, that we will see something banished eventually. But from here, it's more or less just Marincess combo hour. I don't quite know all the Marincess combos, I just know that they make the 2-link ones, and they keep recurring monsters from the graveyard, and that's how they're able to continue to make more material, I guess, for link summoning. Like I said, I don't quite know exactly what's going on. And here it is. He specials the Spring Girl from his hand by banishing a Seahorse from his graveyard, which lets me trigger off Golden Sword Soul since a monster was banished faced up. I banished the Golden Sword Soul to special summon the Cartesia to my board. That way I've got a quick effect fusion on live, so I can prepare myself hopefully for anything that may come my way. They have a link 3 and 1 monster on their board, and they're locked into waters. And so, as you might expect, the Marincess player summons the World Seas Atlantis. So knowing that my monsters will just be banished and not be able to come back, I decide that the most optimal thing here is to activate the Cartesia on my board so that it can perform a fusion and then get Branded Lost ability to grab myself a monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz after everything is already resolved. I use the Mercurier in my hand and the Cartesia on the board to make a Grand Guignol. I specifically don't use the Despian Queritus because I want its effect to go off in the banishment when World Seas Atlantis gets rid of them. And since everything resolves on a new chain, I'm able to activate Branded Lost and my Despian Queritus to summon an Albaz for my deck. There's the Albaz, and off of the Branded Lost, I decide to grab myself another Mercurier just for one more piece of follow-up against any monsters that they might be able to bring out. I go Albaz effect on summon by discarding a copy of Brightest Blazing Branded King for its effect, and fuse with World Seas Atlantis and itself to make a Mirror Jade. And right there, my opponent decides to scoop and go to game 2. This game has gone on long enough, and I clearly had game my next turn. Sending the brightest blazing branded king for cost for Alba's effect was really nice because it lets it so that I can get it back for my next turn as well. And as good as game 1 went, I can't say the same about games 2 and 3. Games 2 and 3 definitely did not go my way, and part of that was terrible misplays on my part, and also just some crazy blowout cards my opponent was able to get off. In game 2, my opponent went first and built a board of Chinging and 2 back row. Now, I'm pretty sure I can play through all of this, and so I start with my interesting combo by Foolish Burialing and getting the Ad-lib Engrave because I had the Aluber in my hand. I normal summon a Aluber, and I'm hit by an Infinite Impermanence. And my hand isn't great to play through an Infinite Impermanence. One piece of interaction is enough to call it quits, and I scoop up my cards, and we proceed to game 3. Now, game 3 is really where I fumbled the bag. I didn't have, like, the worst hand in the world, and so I tried my best to build a board. The board is a little lackluster and a little unfortunate. I do have Brightest Blazing Branded King and Branded in Red on my field. However, because this is game 3 and we're getting close to time, I think it's in my best interest to shotgun the Masquerade in the draw phase. And it turns out to not be the best thing. I probably should have just made the Guardian Chimera when they started committing things to the board. As a result, I get my Masquerade stolen from me. My Mirror Jade is already offline. I've got Brightest Blazing Branded King on board, but I've got to pay 600 life points because they have the Masquerade now to activate it. And they are able to basically do full Marinta's combo. And that pretty much wraps up the game. Like I said, pretty dang unfortunate. I obviously just was the one that misplayed here. However, game 1 was a lot of fun, and there was a lot of really cool back and forth and interactions there. Let me know down in the comments about that Chang'e interaction. I don't quite know how that's supposed to work out. We think we did it right, but if not, let me know. Alright, so we're back from locals, and there are a couple of things that I wanted to talk about before we go ahead and end the episode. And the very first thing is something you saw me do in that Marincess game, and it was involving the Despin Queritus. I honestly think Despin Queritus is an effect that me personally, I have not used as much as I probably should, or have utilized as much as I probably should. And that goes with Granguignol's effect, for all you people that prefer the pronunciation. Granguignol's effect to banish itself and then special summon a Despian from your extra deck. And it's just super solid. Now, obviously, its effect to make your opponent's monsters attack 0 is just really solid in general, but it's the fact that when your opponent destroys it, goes to the graveyard, or they banish it, you can activate its effect and summon an Albaz from grave and essentially super poly away one of their monsters with your Albaz. And that's what you saw me do in the Marincess duel with their World Sea Dragons Atlantis. Now, obviously, we're used to doing this kind of thing with a Rinbrum, the Striking Dragon, but it is really cool to know that there are a couple different ways that we can do this exact same effect. There is also one other somewhat niche thing where we don't run in the deck, but Incredible Ecclesia the Virtuous, she can tribute herself and special an Albaz from the deck. That's another way you can kind of do this effect. But it's just super cool to essentially, on, not quick effect, but whenever a trigger essentially happens, you can do the Albaz fusion with the Queritus, and then this one is a quick effect, you can do the Albaz fusion. It's reactionary, and it lets you play into whatever their board ends up being, and helps break boards as well. I love it. I'm a very big fan, and it's just one of those things that I need to think about more, especially with Granguignol the Dusk Dragon. And on top of that, Granguignol's effect does summon a Despian from our extra deck, but it can summon a Dogmatica from our main deck. And a little spoiler alert for next episode, but we are indeed going to be adding Guiding Quem the Virtuous, which counts as a Dogmatica and a Despia at all times, which means that Granguignol can cheat out our, not necessarily cheat out because it's from the main deck, but it can summon a Guiding Quem the Virtuous, which can do a lot of very good things, so we will need to keep that in mind for going forward into the next week. Yeah, there's a plenty of things we're going to talk about with this card in particular in the next episode. Speaking of the next episode, I do need to let you all know that this is episode 4. Episode 5 will probably almost certainly be the last episode of Branded on a Budget. Now, we're not necessarily going to be getting to that full power, here's my 3 copies of Triple Tactics Thrust, and so on for our deck. That is something we could do, but where we are now with the current build of Branded, it's just going to be a slow burn. Just opening up random packs, essentially hoping that we either get it or get enough value to trade into it. And so, for the time being, we will not be worrying about doing that. We're just going to do our best at making a budget list of Branded. We won't be using that Bestial Lubellion either, because we're putting all the money into the Quem this next coming week. And so, the Golden Sword Soul is going to have to carry us even farther, which I definitely think that it can do. Golden Sword Soul has proven to me that it is a phenomenal light target for Branded Fusion. I think it has been superb, and it has been fulfilling the role that it needs to fulfill. And honestly, since I have a good light target, I have not felt the weight of missing the Bestial Lubellion. I won't deny that not having Lubellion is a little unfortunate at times. Getting to our copies of Branded Lost is a little unfortunate. That said, as you saw in that same Marincess duel, we have multiple copies of Kit that can help us search it, and on top of that, we're running 2 copies of Lost. Next time on our Branded on a Budget, we probably will be revamping our deck list, including our ratios of things, so that we can have access to anything that we might need at whatever time we might need. Obviously, I'm going to slot this in somewhere, but I do want to try to stay at 45 cards, while also having abilities to get to different things. I do think I may bump up Kit to cut 3 copies, and maybe even lower Lost to 1. I'm not sure, I'm a little undecided on that. But just because we have 3 Alubers doesn't mean we can't play 3 Kits. They do the same thing, no doubt. But if you can do both of their effects, you get 2 Branded cards, and that is very, very, very powerful, and I've seen that just in some of the games that I've played myself. Now, the last thing that I want to mention is that duel that you saw with the Marincess against the Marincess deck, it took place at my OTS, where we were able to do the World Championship tournament, whatever you want to call it, where we followed the World Championship list. And as such, in that duel, we only actually were using 1 copy of our Branded opening. We did get the 3 of them for our deck, as you can see here. But for that duel specifically, we only used 1 copy. And I'm not necessarily sure if having that extra tiny little bit of consistency would have helped too much for the duels that I played there. But I digress. The main reason I bring up the fact that that was the World Championship list, or World Championship Tournament Day, was the fact that we were able to snag ourselves a World Championship 2024 envelope. So that's the other thing I want to talk about. As you go to these locals, these OTS store tournaments, is that you'll be getting prizes here and there. If not just the OTS pack and the tournament entry pack or whatever your tournament or OTS might do, you may also get things like a World Championship envelope in a drawing. You might go to a sneak peek and get a playmat in a drawing. Those are valuable items. People do want those things. They are very willing to trade you their cards, or even sell you their cards, or purchase your items off of you for money, so you can use that money to buy cards, and you can build up that deck. With this envelope alone, we could in theory build the entire Branded Despia deck list, maybe even including the thrusts, if we really wanted to. And I don't want to do that. I want to probably keep this envelope for myself because I think it's neat, for one. And then 2, it's just that I don't know. If I feel like the longer we've gone with this deck list, it's been more in the spirit of Branded on a Budget to build the deck as budget friendly as possible. And that's the final thing that we're going to be talking about. Well, maybe not the final thing, but one of the things we'll be talking about next episode is how we are going to be building budgety every single time as much as we possibly can. Specifically when it comes to new cards and reprints of cards that are expensive and trying to get them at a good price. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and next time we'll be adding Quem for our final episode of Branded on a Budget.